Hello and welcome to another Brawl video. Today we're checking out a mono-blue devotion deck, and unlike most other blue Brawl decks, we're not actually playing a single counterspell. So this deck is much more of a beatdown deck that has lots of creatures and then plenty of enchantments that will reward us for hitting the opponent with our evasive creatures, so we get to draw a ton of cards. And our commander is Thassa, God of the Sea, a 3-mana 5/5 indestructible legendary enchantment creature, but it only turns into a creature once our devotion reaches at least 5, and then at the beginning of our upkeep, regardless of it being a creature or not, we get to scry 1, and for 1 and a blue, we can target one of our creatures to make it unblockable until end of turn. So that's a very useful ability to help close out the game. Can also target herself with that ability to deal 5 damage. So then taking a look at our deck breakdown, I've split it up into a few different categories. Only have a small ramp section, and that's on the one hand because our curve is already quite low, so we don't need a ton of mana, and on the other hand also because artifacts usually don't contribute towards our devotion to blue, and we want to add as many blue mana symbols to the board as possible so we can enable Thassa. Then our removal includes a lot of auras that will enchant opposing creatures to remove their abilities and shrink them down, since those auras will still contribute towards our devotion to blue, and since we have a lot of evasive creatures, we can pretty much ignore those creatures from now on and fly over them or make Thassa unblockable to attack past them, so that's also a very good answer to opposing creature commanders. Then we've got our biggest category by far, which are the evasive creatures, lots of 1-mana flyers, some 2-mana creatures in there too, that can consistently hit the opponent to then enable our next category, which are the card draw enchantments, lots of coastal piracy-like effects that let us draw a card whenever one of our creatures hits the opponent, so those are very good if we've got an army of 1/1 flyers on the battlefield. And then we've got some miscellaneous cards that also play well with our devotion theme. And then last but not least, we've got 2 extra turn cards, which are very nice curve toppers after we've established our board of flyers and card draw enchantments, so we can hopefully close out the game before the opponent does the same. And then taking a look at our detailed breakdown, starting with our mana acceleration, Chrome Mox can maybe help cast Thassa on turn 2. We've got Arcane Signets, can cast it and then still maybe play a 1-drop afterwards. Then both Midnight Clock and Altar to the Pantheon actually contribute towards our devotion to blue. Then we've got Heraldic Banner, pumping our blue creatures, giving them 1 additional power, and then Nyx Lotus can be very powerful if we've already established our devotion, as it can make a ton of extra mana for us. Then taking a look at our removal, we've got Unable to Scream, Witness Protection at 1 mana, and then our 2-mana enchantments can be played at instant speed, Eaten by Piranhas, Mystical Subdual, and Utter Insignificance. Then Harbinger of the Tides can be played at instant speed for 2 additional mana, but even just playing it for 2 mana and bouncing a tapped creature can be a nice tempo play while improving our devotion. We've got Merfolk Trickster, we can play at instant speed. Tidebinder Mage, good against red and green creatures, locking them down. And Brazen Borrower, we can use the Adventure to bounce something, and then later the creature still provides 2 devotion. Then our smaller evasive creatures start with a Lantern Bearer at 1 mana. We've got the Assistant occasionally letting us scry 1. The Thousand-Faced Shadow we can also potentially ninjutsu. Cloudfin Raptor can grow through the Evolve mechanic. Now do keep in mind, if you cast Thassa, if you don't have 5 devotion yet, it's not going to enter as a creature, so it's not going to grow the Raptor, but if you already have enough devotion, then it's a nice 5/5 to keep growing it. Then we've got Fairy Seer to scry 2. Harrier Strix can also maybe tap something down when it enters, so can also clear path for our flyers to keep attacking, similar to the Network Disruptor, which is also an artifact creature. We've got Mausoleum Wanderer, which can occasionally counter a key instant or sorcery, or at least delay them by a turn. Then we've got Mistcloaked Herald as just an unblockable creature, similar to Slitherblade, a 1/2 version. We've got the Silver Raven letting us scry 1 when it enters. Stormtamer, another way to protect our key threats. Spectral Sailor has a mana sink to draw a card. Spyglass lets us make a map token when it enters, and then a Mockingbird is quite flexible, can cast it for X = 0 as just a 1/1 flyer, but it can also copy other creatures that are already on the battlefield. Then at 2 mana we've got Emrakul's Messenger, which is quite synergistic with all our card draw enchantments, as it'll be able to make additional spawn tokens. We've got Fairy Mastermind to punish the opponent for drawing extra cards. The Drowner belongs in the removal category, can also keep a creature locked down for an extra turn. We've got Malcolm drawing extra cards when it connects. The Mystic makes additional 1/1 flyers when we draw our second card each turn, so another nice payoff for the various card draw enchantments. Phantasmal Image, a very cheap clone effect, although it does come with a drawback of getting sacrificed if anyone can target it, so also a bit of a nombo with Thassa's ability to make creatures unblockable, but still a very cheap clone effect that might be able to copy the opponent's stuff that might cost a lot more. Then there's the Escort to give one of our creatures hexproof at instant speed. There's a Skydiver, which can maybe steal some opposing artifacts as well. Marauder can turn opposing creatures into 0/1s without abilities, so that can also clear path if they have some large flyer or reach creature that's getting in the way. Kira can protect our team by giving them the ability to counter spells and abilities that target our creatures for the first time each turn. Also a bit of a nombo with Thassa, but it's usually worth it against removal-heavy decks. Vendilion Clique is quite versatile, can take a look at the opponent's hand to take away a key threat. We've got Tempest Djinn, which grows with a number of basic islands, and that's also why the mana base is so streamlined. We've got a Warlord Rogue making a pair of Thopter tokens, and another way to make our creatures unblockable. And Cavalier of Gales also provides 3 devotion, lets us brainstorm when it enters, also synergizes with some of our fetch lanes. Then our card draw effects start with Grazilax, which lets us draw 1 additional card even if we hit with multiple flyers, but can also help pick up some of our creatures, which can be good if we're expecting a sweeper or to re-enable enter the battlefield abilities. Bident of Thassa is very on theme here, letting us draw extra cards whenever our creatures connect, and can also activate, forcing the opponent to attack. And then we've got a bunch of similar effects. Coastal Piracy was kind of the original, and then more recently we've added Curiosity and Windrider. And then a Reconnaissance Mission is basically a Coastal Piracy that can also be cycled. Then we've got Flow of Knowledge as another payoff for controlling lots of islands. Defiler of Dreams is very good with all those 1-mana flyers, as we can cast them at the cost of 2 life and then draw a card. And finally, Gadwick also provides 3 devotion, so very good alongside Thassa, and also good mana sink to draw additional cards. Then our miscellaneous section has a small mana denial theme with Confounding Conundrum, good against opposing fetch lands. Spreading Seas can enchant opposing lands, turning them into an island. And then we've got Harbinger, turning all non-basic lands into islands, can be good at punishing multicolor mana bases. Favorable Winds will pump up all our flyers, and then Master of Waves is a great payoff for having lots of blue devotion, making multiple elemental tokens that will get +1/+1, so essentially a bunch of 2/1 tokens, although they will go away once the Master is answered. And then finally our 2 extra turn cards, Temporal Manipulation and Time Warp, also end up in the graveyard, where we can maybe get them back with our Mystic Sanctuary, and that's also the reason why we have these blue fetch lands, since a Mystic Sanctuary has the island type, so we can search it up, and then with enough islands in play, can return an instant or sorcery from our graveyard back to the top of our deck, so we can maybe chain together multiple extra turns. Then 32 islands, Otawara can offer a bit more interaction, and of course Nykthos, another awesome payoff for having lots of blue devotion. So yeah, that's our deck. Now let's jump into some games and see how the deck does. Okay, we're on the draw, facing Kellan, blue-green. Our hand has a Tidebinder, which is probably going to be decent in the matchup. Can even copy it with Phantasmal Image. Do need to draw a 3rd land, but once we do, we're off to the races. Spreading Seas can also maybe mess up their green source. Now Banner's not going to be safe once they get Kellan on the battlefield, but that's where Tidebinder can maybe lock it down. And Nykthos could also be exciting once we get Gadwick on the battlefield. Kellan Adventures. And our opponent's off to the races. So for now, let's just Spreading Seas the forest, I guess. We might actually be fixing their colors even more. A monster manual can cheat things into play. Alright, so yeah, don't have a answer lined up. So what's my move? Gadwick to improve my devotion for Nykthos versus probably just play Banner. And then next turn, hopefully whatever they cheat in play, I can then copy with Image and then lock down with Tidebinder. At least that's the plan. They might be tempted to run out Kellan. For now, sacking the clue. They can activate this at instant speed, so that makes it a little more awkward. Okay, so no image this turn. Could play Thassa, but that wastes some mana, so maybe this Gadwick for X equals 2. Draw 2 cards, improve my devotion, and then next turn I can maybe sink a bunch of mana into our Nykthos. Protection, another removal spell. Alright, so Nyxbloom Ancient. Yeah, so opponent can pretty much empty their hand now. Would love to copy it with image, but Tidebinder also not a great answer to a Nyxbloom Ancient, since they still get the ability, and our opponent's just going off. Illumra milled all lands as well. Okay, I mean, I can do some cool things next turn as well, but it's probably not going to be good enough. Dust Bowl can also blow up Nykthos, so I may only get one turn with it. So step 1 could be to Phantasmal Image the Nyxbloom Ancient. I can then Witness Protection it, or I can keep it locked down with Tidebinder, but that's probably better served tapping down a Illumra or a Voltborn. Alright, so step 1, before I tap my lands, I want to tap my artifacts. Since this only affects... I guess never mind, it's any permanent. Alright, so either way, Phantasmal Image. Can also tap down Illumra. Copy Nyxbloom. Devotion still 4, but now we have access to a lot more mana. Tidebinder. Tap down Voltborn. Keep Illumra locked down. And then, let's see here. 7, this is another 3 mana. So we can kind of go off. And probably save Flow of Knowledge for next turn. For now, just get on the board. A Witness Protection, your... Is it Nyxbloom? Is it Voltborn? I mean, our opponent pretty much has infinite mana already. So maybe it's limiting the card draw that's relevant now. Play Fairy Seer. And then Trickster, Vendilion Clique. I guess we keep the Clique, and yeah, Trickster's not bad either. And then I'll use Nykthos to make 1,000,000 mana. Cast Flow of Knowledge, only draw 4. Discard 2 lands. And then I can click my opponents right now while we have the floating mana. And yeah, Hullbreaker Horror has to go. Unable to scream the Nyxbloom at this point. And then activate Thassa. I guess it doesn't matter here. I'll keep the Trickster around. Okay, well, that was a cool turn. Thanks to Phantasmal Image copying Nyxbloom Ancient. All 3 of the opponent's creatures dealt with somehow. And we still have a Trickster in the back pocket. Other opponents got a decent amount of life to work with. So won't be able to present a lethal next turn. Also have to be careful not to target my Phantasmal Image with Thassa. And wow, our opponent concedes. I'll take it. On to the next one. Okay, we're on the play, facing Shelob, Child of Ungoliant. And our hand is maybe missing some cheap evasive creatures. So we can probably mulligan, even though I like Curiosity as kind of a sticky threat in the matchup. Drowner can lock down a mana elf. So it does have a little bit of potential still. Yeah, you know what, maybe I can try. Hang on to Polluted Delta, since we might be able to get back the Temporal Manipulation with our Sanctuary. And then Shelob's gonna try to turn our creatures into food. So if we see a mana elf, we can tap it down in their upkeep. Nothing so far. Do I still play the Drowner anyways? I don't think I do. Even though it would set up our Enduring Curiosity a little bit better. Play Thassa. With a Defiler we can also quickly empty our hand if we draw some 1-drops. Don't need more removal, already have the Subdual. Alright, so end of turn Curiosity, likely the play. Shelob does have Ward 2, although we can still maybe tap it down with a Drowner or cast a Subdual on it. Opponent no doubt can remove the Curiosity, ramping in the process, but we still get our enchantment back, and it's still 2 Devotion. And then Herald seems reasonable. I can cast it after I play the Defiler. Does mean I have to use a fetch lane, so I wouldn't be getting back the Temporal Manipulation. But that's okay. You get to draw a card. Attack, hit for 5, draw another card. Now our opponent could have a cheap fight spell to then immediately get the ability of Shelob. But in the meantime we're going off. Yeah, I've definitely tried to brew some decks around Defiler back in Standard. Never really worked out since it's pretty weak to red aggro. And it does seem like they have a 1-mana fight effect. Cut down, alright, just taking out the Heralds. That's acceptable. So now we've got a ton of great options. We've got our extra turn also lined up. So Shelob does not have reach. Has a lot of text, but no reach on a spider. That's unheard of. Draw 3 cards. And then I can still play a Raven. Scry in the process. Unable to scream would also be a fine solution to Shelob. But yeah, we can just take our extra turn here. Cast another creature. And our opponent's pretty dead. Next turn we can make Thassa unblockable for 5 additional damage, and that'll do it. On to the next one. Okay, we're on the play, facing Eshki, a Temur high-power deck. Our hand's a little lackluster, even though Unable to Scream is a decent answer to the commander. This is a bit better. Master of Waves, one of our payoffs for increasing our devotion. Got Trickster providing 2 devotion already. Sadly, no 1-drop, so we don't get to curve out perfectly. But at least we've got relevant Disruption, can also tap down mana creatures and their upkeep. I like this Elvish Mystic. And then I could go with a Drowner first. So it'll be locked down for an extra turn. Opponent floats a green, but the floating mana goes away in their main phase. So yeah, turn 1 Cloudfin Raptor would have been pretty awesome. Can still probably find a spot in our curve to play it out. Now the Feaster's pretty strong. So yeah, I guess it's just Thassa this turn. And then next turn maybe Raptor plus Trickster. And then trying to increase our devotion as much as possible before playing Master of Waves, which our opponent will struggle to remove since it has protection from red. So with Thassa, I'll keep a land on top. We already have our Curiosity to draw cards, so we just want more lands and cheap flyers. So I think I bottomed the Strix, so we can hopefully hit our land drop. Find another 1-drop instead. Okay, so this turn I can increase my devotion twice potentially. So this turn it's gotta be a Raptor. And then might be Trickster in their turn, as opposed to playing it now just so I can get in for 5. And then we can tap down the Feaster. So no discount this turn either, although the Battle Crier is still very good. And a Whale, yeah, that also triggers Eshki, thanks to the discount from Battle Crier. Nyx Lotus would be awesome, but we don't have a 4th land yet, so that's the priority. And we found it. So this turn we could play the Enduring Curiosity, and then next turn Master of Waves. I get to attack with Thassa and Cloudfin Raptor, so we get to draw 2 cards right away. Assuming they don't jump Thassa here. And then next turn I can likely make a whole bunch of tokens, playing another 1-drop before playing the Master. So that should hopefully stabilize the ground for us. So the Whale eventually vanishes, but they can likely cast 2 spells for a while, which will also proliferate Eshki's +1 counters. Ascendancy for haste. Enduring Curiosities, happy to trade for an opposing creature given the chance, but I do want to preserve my Author Devotion. Whale attacks, I'll take 7. And a Song of Seasons is next. The land enters untapped here, so they can still cast something afterwards. Especially with a discount from Battle Crier, they could cast some expensive spells. So depending on what happens here, we could be in okay shape or we could fall behind. Get to untap. And don't need to prioritize Island anymore. Alright, so can go ahead and attack with my Raptor and Thassa, since I wouldn't be increasing my power on the Raptor. They're gonna bounce Thassa, fair enough. Back to hand. Still happy to play Master of Waves here. And then, if that survives, we can keep the opponent's creatures at bay. Do have to watch out for Eshki just burning us out. Alright, and our opponent scoops it up. Master of Waves gets it done. On to the next one. Okay, we're on the play facing Betor, so Amazon life gain. Our hands got potential protection to shut down their commander. Do need one of our card draw effects, perhaps. But yeah, hopefully those will follow suit. And then can maybe save the fetch lanes to get our Mystic Sanctuary at some point, although currently no instant or sorcery to get back. So no play on turn 1. Harbinger I could also just cast to increase my devotion, but we'll get the Mystic going first. Sidekick 1/3 flyer. Yeah, that's actually going to line up pretty well here. So I could already consider shutting it down with Witness Protection. Still tempted to play Thassa first. And then next turn I can increase my devotion some more. Alright, Stronghold Arena. Can also gain some life here. But now we can bounce the Sidekick with Harbinger. So then I'm looking for another point of devotion. And yeah, Confounding Conundrum will do it. And that'll also trigger the Mystic, making another flyer. So now we really want a Bindant of Thassa, Coastal Piracy type effect to leverage our board presence. Wall of Blossoms is acceptable. Can also use Warlord Rogue to make creatures unblockable next turn. And what do we think of the Assistants? It's okay. It'll trigger off Banner, but it's not quite the Coastal Piracy effect that I wanted. So I think we can do better. And then this turn I could Witness Protection the Sidekick, but I think we should save that for Betor. And then now, I guess it's just Warlord Rogue. Hit for 5. And then next turn, hopefully take care of Betor while pumping our blue creatures. And then I can still make stuff unblockable. Sidekick attacks. Don't really feel like I want to double block it here. That's pretty risky in the face of removal. So we'll let that slide. And we actively want them to tap out for Betor. That's going to be a Siege Rhino instead. Storm Tamer, again, a fine card, but I feel like we can do better. Island is not quite it. But yeah, I'll play Banner. Name blue. Can activate Thassa twice. And then activate on itself. Activate on... could be the Harbinger here. And that'll do it. Awesome. On to the next one. Okay, we're on the play, facing Tiamat, 5-color dragons. This is definitely a matchup where having counterspells would be more useful than any of our auras that can shut down creatures retroactively. That being said, Harbinger could steal a win, since we are facing a 5-color mana base. So, just keeping based on Harbinger alone. Escort can also protect it, so don't necessarily want to play that one turn 2. Halfling does help. Harbinger could bounce it at some point. So we'll start with a Skydiver, even though it can also maybe steal a mana artifact at some point. And then hope to see lots of non-basic lands. That Harbinger can turn into islands. Mountain into Shaman. So not the start we were hoping for. But I suppose we can Harbinger bounce the Halfling. And that'll still set them back a bit. They need to play more non-basic lands for Harbinger to have any effect. There we go. So currently they wouldn't be able to cast Tiamat. So yeah, as much as I want to play the Bident, I think we have to play Harbinger, otherwise next turn with an untapped land they can cast Tiamat, and once it's in play, it's probably game over. So then we'll try Harbinger, which will turn this into an island as well. Fine trading for the Shaman, of course. So yeah, they need 2 more basic lands in order to cast Tiamat. Temple Garden's a nice island. Nicol Bolas is castable. So, what do we like? Bident I should keep. Gadwick can be a way of tapping down Nicol Bolas as well. Escort is a way to protect Harbinger, which keeps Tiamat in check. So all cards are useful. Maybe I do keep Gadwick and Bident, because if our opponent has removal, they also need the correct colors to cast it, which may not be the case. And I'll take 3. Even though trading Harbinger for Dragon Speaker is also reasonable. Alright, so this turn could also play Thassa, or I can cast Gadwick for X equals 1, and then next turn Thassa taps down Nicol Bolas, or Bident can do the same. So we get to draw a bunch. And this way we can maybe hit our land drop for a turn as well. Okay. No attacks. And that's another nice island. Although opponent able to still cast the Sentinel thanks to the discount from Fearsome Whelp. Yeah, that's rough. Do I trade here? I mean, the damage has been done. I mean, even without the discount, to be fair, they would have been able to cast it. Okay, this has Ward 2, so we're not gonna tap it down if we cast Bident. We're also just kind of losing in the air at the moment. So just gotta hope they don't have more dragons they can actually cast. So maybe it is Bident. Tap down Dragon Speaker. Is it worth it to lose a creature just to draw a card? Probably not. But I will play Siren so we can jump if needed. And then next turn casting Thassa lets me maybe pay the ward. Prismatic Vista, also just an island. And then now, do I jump? I think I do, even though Bident can draw me more cards, finding more chump blockers in the process. Brazen Borrower could be a decent answer. Use Borrower to bounce Sentinel. Pay the ward, and I can tap down some stuff with Gadwick in the meantime. Cavalier's also an option, since it blocks Nicol Bolas profitably. Yeah, maybe Cavalier's still the better play. Tap down Dragon Speaker. And then we'll draw into these anyway. Go to attackers. Bones at 10, draw 4 cards. so Slitherblade's my only play. So if they have removal for Cavalier, we die. Would take 11 exactly. But it's got to be a red removal spell. Now they have double red as well. There are some dragons for double red that they might not have been able to cast before. But nope, just an attack for 6. Opponent reconsiders, passes. Okay, so we might be in the clear here. We've got a lot of mana available, can tap down a lot of stuff and bounce more stuff. So let's say we start with Brazen Borrower, bounce Sentinel, tap Nicol Bolas, pay the ward. Then I can also clique to take away the creature we just bounced. Tapping the Whelp in the process. Alright, Teval and Sentinel. So if we have guaranteed lethal, there's no point in me taking anything since it could draw into an instant. But we do not quite have lethal yet. We've got 6 going through. Opponent can block 2 creatures. I guess never mind, we do have 10 exactly. So then I shouldn't take anything. Attack all out. They can block. Take 4, 5, 10 exactly. Super close game, and it all hinged on this Harbinger, but yeah, we kept it for a reason. Sweet, on to the next one. Okay, we're on the play, facing Sidisi, Sultai Self-Mill. At least the zombies don't fly, so we can hopefully take over with our Coastal Piracy and the Mystic making additional flyers. Wouldn't mind finding an aura to shut down their commander. So that's what we're scrying towards. And I think I just want lands at this point. Good enough flying creatures as is. They do have a Deathrite Shaman. Still needs a landing graveyard to be enabled. And what's our sequencing going to look like? Could be Mystic now, and then copy it with Mockingbird next turn to set up our Coastal Piracy. Although if I don't draw a land next turn, I might want to Mockingbird copy Fairy Seer to scry. Either way, I think playing Mystic now is fine, as opposed to keeping up Fairy Mastermind. But if I do draw the land, then copying the Mystic seems fun. Could also play Thassa to spend all of my mana. Alright, Lotus Cobra is scary. But at least Deathrite doesn't make mana at the moment. And Malcolm the draw. Okay, so now, I mean, Thassa also lets us scry next turn. So that could set up our Coastal Piracy. I think now I'm in favor of Mockingbird, copy Fairy. And then I can cast another 2-drop here. Alright, Witness Protection, an answer to Sidisi, and then land first. So those are 2 good cards to see. And then most likely play Malcolm end of turn. So we've got the perfect setup for this Coastal Piracy, but our opponent does have a fetch land now, so that's a lot of extra mana between Cobra and Deathrite. So this turn could be pretty brutal. Hopefully they just play Sidisi, and then in 2 turns we'll be able to answer their commander. They're also maybe worried about an opposing counterspell. But yeah, there's Sidisi, that resolves. And then they still have 2 mana available. Could be a self-mill effect to keep enabling Sidisi. Souls of the Lost, discard Narcomoeba. Okay. Flash and Malcolm. And then it's going to be Coastal Piracy, attack, draw 4 cards. Making a flyer in the process. And then next turn we can worry about answering Sidisi. Thassa as an indestructible blocker is pretty good too. Alright, and if we ever find an extra turn card, we're in business. But I guess our opponent could be in the same position, where if they can take an extra turn, they've got a dominating board state, so they can just end the game right now. Mortuary surveils, hoping to mill a creature. And then Sidisi will trigger once again when it attacks. Says no to Tyvar. I'm not opposed to chumping the souls here. Ooh, Driven. Well, and Despair, so 5 creatures attacking. I'll have to discard 5 cards. They all have Menace and Trample, so no chump blocking allowed. We fall to 7. And my entire hand is gone. Alright, that's brutal. Now the good news is we'll get to draw an entirely fresh hand after we attack. But our opponent also got to do the same here. So yeah, that's Driven to Despair for you. Pretty good if you mill it as well, since you can still use the Aftermath half. So our opponent's got a full hand. And Arboreal Grazer, actually pretty relevant as a reach creature. Can block Malcolm, so that prevents multiple cards from being drawn. And yeah, unless I can go land plus extra turn, I think we've lost. There's more. Elvish Mystic is fine. Okay, so I could play Thassa, make Malcolm unblockable to attack past Grazer, but it seems worse than keeping my mana available, since again, we'll need to find an extra turn card here. There's 2 in the deck. We get to draw 4 cards, so not very likely. Harbinger would have been funny. Eaten by Piranhas answers Sidisi, and Confounding Conundrum could have been reasonable earlier, but we seem very much dead. So, can play Thassa, play Eaten by Piranhas on Sidisi or Souls of the Lost. But that's still only 2 blockers. Opponent goes to attackers. Try and shut down Sidisi. Attack all out. Deathrite can also drain us for 2. So I can block Cobra, block Souls, and still take 8. GG's. On to the next one. Okay, we're on the play, facing the Verbose host. And this could be another deck that is pretty aggressive for a blue deck. Our hand is okay, missing a 2-drop. But yeah, Banner setting up Gadwick is decent. Opponents got their own 1-mana flyer. Could consider trading if they play their commander, so we don't let them increase their speed. Opponent just gets in for 1, I'll take it. And now a diversion unit, 2-1 flyer. Okay, so we've got options. Playing Thassa doesn't accomplish much until we play Gadwick, so we can hit for 5. But yeah, that might already be happening next turn. So then I still kind of want to preserve my devotion, but maybe this tricks will prevent a unit from attacking. Can maybe counter our flow of knowledge later. Eidetic Memory draws. And a Disruptor can tap down the Strix, our opponent gets to attack unopposed. And Utter Insignificance is a decent answer to one of their flyers, while still keeping our devotion up. So I don't hate it. This only counters instants and sorceries. So what I could do this turn is Banner plus Utter Insignificance, maybe at instant speed. And then next turn sink more mana into Gadwick. Opponent's gonna bounce the Strix. Sure. And goes to attackers. And then I'll cast this now on the Pteramander or Diversion units. Close call. Probably go for Diversion units, since that might shut down our flow of knowledge later. And Mockingbird copies Pteramander. Draw our own Storm Tamer, which is okay. Gadwick already gets us to enough devotion for Thassa, so I don't think Storm Tamer is a priority. Find a Slither Blade instead. So yeah, we can play Gadwick. Just gonna get an island. I can Gadwick for X equals 2 maybe, and then still play Slither Blade, so I can tap down Pteramander, hit for 5 with Thassa. And still kind of like Slither Blade here. Altar can gain more life. The main thing we have going for us is more mana than the opponent, so we can deploy more spells. They've got their own unblockable creatures. Alright, Bident is nice, although do I have time to deploy it is the question. I already have Flow of Knowledge for card advantage, so that might be overkill. Forcing the opponent's creatures to attack, also not super relevant. So I think we bottom. Mystic Sanctuary can just get back the Flow of Knowledge. But I believe I need the target to already be in the graveyard, so it's not like I can play Sanctuary and cast Flow of Knowledge in response. Plus, I would probably just want to play Altar, Strix, and Siren this turn anyway. Start tapping down some stuff. So this will gain a life. And then we can still explore onto Slitherblade. Finding a Time Warp. Alright, now I'm gonna keep the Sanctuary in hand. Opponent knows about the Time Warp, so they might keep a counterspell for it. But they're also just kind of dying on the board to Thassa making herself unblockable. And our opponent scoops it up. Awesome. On to the next one. Okay, we're on the draw, facing Galadriel, blue-green landfall. So Harbinger is relevant, shutting down fetch lands and various lands that would let them scry to maybe go off with Galadriel. My hand is pretty clunky, however. Witness Protection can shut down their commander, but we're not really doing anything until turn 3. Master Waves could be fun. So I think I'll keep, but if we don't draw lands in the next 2 turns, we're in trouble. Utopia Sprawl enchants the forest, so it's safe from Harbinger. And a Lotus Cobra, plus a fetch land already. Yeah, good witness protection, the Cobra, if we don't have anything else going on. Or we can go for Galadriel. Yeah, since Harbinger will shut down fetch lanes, Cobra is a little bit less of a problem. So maybe I go for Galadriel here. More of a nuisance for them to get rid of it. A Raven would normally scry triggering Galadriel, but this legitimate business person couldn't care less. Alright, so probably time for Harbinger. Could also clique at instant speed if we're worried about a counterspell. That's kind of what it's made for. But I want to mitigate the damage from Cobra. Archdruid still makes a lot of mana, but I guess the business person is not an elf. So yeah, all things considered, things are going okay. Can take the one from the business person. And then now Thassa has an option. Master Waves is also decent. Or we could play Clique in their draw step, just to check out their situation, make sure there's no bomb they're about to cast. And then next turn go Malcolm plus Thassa to get back on the board. So let them draw first, and then Clique. Looks like they might have had a counterspell in hand. Wash away. Alright, so had I cast Clique in my turn, they would not have had the mana for Wash away. But at least we baited it out. So now Thassa can stabilize the ground once we deploy it alongside Malcolm. Could even set up an ambush with our instant speed devotion. And this is going to transform even if I block the 1/1. Our opponent would get a 4/4 Trampler. Yeah, that's pretty good, but I'll let it happen. Can keep it at bay with Thassa. And Nykthos, sadly, also an island here, so this is a double-edged sword. But, yeah, we'll play Thassa. And I think it's worth it to run the Malcolm Gambit, as opposed to playing it main phase. Ring goes south. Cobra is a ring bearer. Make some mana. And let's see if we get to enable Thassa. We do. Block the 4/4, and that's it, taking 6. And then a fairy is still good for increasing my devotion for Master Waves. So I can play that first. And Gadwick is good too. So we can attack with just Malcolm. Can probably ditch Nykthos now. Play Master Waves, and then next turn, Time Warp could seal the deal. But yeah, if they have a powerful Curve Topper, we could just be dead, and yeah, that appears to be the case here. So yeah, this is the most I can prevent, and that still has me taking 13, I believe. So GG's, that's too bad. Craterhoof for the win. Took a while for the animation to actually kill us, but there we have it. On to the next one. Okay, we're on the draw. This hand's a little sketchy. A few too many expensive spells and only 2 lands, so I'll mulligan. This seems better. Turn 1, play Raven. Can copy it several times, just to keep scrying. And Signet lets me go Signet plus Mockingbird next turn. I'll keep another land on top, but then we can scry future lands to the bottom. And then we're looking for one of our Bident of Thassa, Coastal Piracy-like effect. Actually can copy the Elvish Mystic now to make additional mana for us. It still flies. So then next turn I could go Thassa plus Image. Opponent close to casting Tatyova. Alright, so step 1, I guess see if Thassa resolves. Could also try Midnight Clock into Thassa, which I don't hate. So if they do counter Thassa, at least we've got more mana to redeploy it. And maybe our opponent will present a juicier target for Phantasmal Image. Do have to be careful not to target our Phantasmal Imaged creature with Thassa, since then it just goes away. Risen Reef. Don't have a ton of elementals necessarily. By copying the Mystic I did not improve my devotion to blue, but now a Curiosity is the perfect draw. So if that resolves, I can also copy it with a Phantasmal Image. And get 2 of them. Smash and draw 6 cards here. So that's pretty neat. And there's our extra turn card. Flooded Strand can fetch Mystic Sanctuary to get it back, and we also drew Time Warp. So I can take 3 extra turns, so unless they bounce my entire board, we should get there. Alright, Lumra, I guess, has reach, so that does get in the way. But we can always activate Thassa. So any removal for Lumra would be appreciated. Harbinger can also shut down fetch lands, would also shut down our own Mystic Sanctuary here. So yeah, we can fetch, put Time Warp on top, and then second main still scry with a Seer to make use of all of our mana. Activate Thassa on itself. And I can fetch here and get Sanctuary. Get back Time Warp. And yeah, that's good enough. Next turn, take another extra turn, have more mana to activate Thassa multiple times, and then we should just have lethal, even without the 3rd extra turn. On to the next one. Okay, we're on the play, facing Old Rutstein, and our hand's got potential. Missing our Coastal Piracy effect to draw some cards, so that's what we want to try and scry towards. Islands, I'm not going to prioritize since we don't have any expensive cards in hand yet. Bones go to Tiny Bones, pretty good. Think we'll start with Marauder over Messenger. We're not enabling this anytime soon. Take 1 of Tiny Bones. And then now Thassa, gonna be our play. And then next turn we should be able to get to 5 Devotion between Altar and Wanderer. Old Rutstein also find target for Utter Insignificance. Unable to Scream I could also keep as more interaction. And this turn just go Alter plus Unable to Scream. Although, I don't necessarily want them to chump with Rutstein if I enchant it here. So I think I kind of like Wander first. And then letting them untap for one turn is probably not a disaster. Chupacabra takes out Marauder. Still hoping to top deck one of our card draw enchantments. Take 2. And there we go, perfect. Alright, what we needed. If I draw land, I can still cast one of my 1-drops. Not quite, but now we have 4 removal spells in hand. That's pretty much all of them. Reanimate Chupacabra. That's fine. Blow up my Curiosity. Still have it in enchantment form, so we still have the 2 devotion. And next turn Thassa, making herself unblockable, could maybe close out the game for us. Opponent destroying the Wanderer, that's fine. I guess I can counter it. Maybe they'll sack their treasure for some reason. Alright, we successfully countered their removal spell. So now they can get back the Wanderer by using the treasure. So they're at a virtual 1 life here. If we just activate Thassa twice. Tidebinder, a decent answer to Old Rutstein. And we can probably do better, since it doesn't shut down the ability. Flow of Knowledge I'm unable to cast. So let's say I activate Thassa on herself, then I can also Unable to Scream on the Wanderer. Not quite enough mana to also play a Messenger to then make a token. But then I would draw 2. Yeah, that seems reasonable. Alright, so we got to see this mono-blue devotion deck in action, and it was a fun blast from the past, having relived the standard era of mono-blue devotion, pretty much. But yeah, the deck's quite fun. It's a different playstyle to your usual mono-blue decks that are filled to the brim with counterspells, so if you want to beat down and draw lots of cards with your small flyers, this might be the deck for you. So yeah, that's going to do it for today's gameplay. I want to thank you for watching, hope you enjoyed, and as always, have a nice day.